Today, we talk to a company that's dominated tech news headlines in Ottawa throughout 2021. We're going to dig into the backstory of Rewind with its two co founders. All this coming up on Techopia Live. Hello, Michael Curran. This is a bonus episode of Techopia Live. I'm supplementing the work from our regular host, Sherry Ask, who will continue to produce a few episodes. What I'm focused on is doing a series of year-end interviews with some of Ottawa's most intriguing technology companies. Today, we speak with a company that's been making headlines at OBJ for many years, but none more, perhaps more important than this year. I'm referring to Rewind. And please welcome right now two of its co-founders, Mike Potter and James Ciesielski. Hello, gentlemen.
Hey, Michael.
How are you?
Well, I'm very happy to have both of you here. I think we might have bumped into each other over the years, but I've never had a proper business discussion for you. So I'm really eager to dig into this, and I appreciate you guys are really busy. So thanks for being here. I want to start, let people get to know you personally a little bit better. And I thought, maybe, Mike, we could start with you. Give us a quick sense of your bio. Rewind isn't your first company, so tell us a little bit more about where you've been over your career.
Yeah, I've been entrepreneur, I think, most of my life. Started my first company in university, teaching people how to use the internet. That evolved into a company that was doing web development and an online curling website called inthehack.com that I ran for about 10 years. I worked for about 5 years, just over 5 years at Adobe here in Ottawa from the Excelio or JetForm acquisition. Spent 5 years there, left to run my first startup. From there, bounced around to a couple of companies, one of which where I met James, and then started Rewind, like you mentioned, in 2015, doing backups for SaaS.
Neat. And you did your MBA, I think, at U of O, is that right?
I did my MBA at Ottawa University. That's right. I announced that the day I got married to my wife. After we said our vows, I said, just so you know, I'm taking a year off of school or taking a year off of work and doing my MBA. But she already married me at that point, so she couldn't go back.
There was no turning back.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, Mike, the neat thing I found on your LinkedIn, little piece of trivia here, is that you're also a hockey coach with the Blackburn Hamlet Minor Hockey Association. 8 years as a coach. The reason I think that's cool because I grew up in Blackburn Hamlet, so I've been at that old arena. Although I hear it's been renovated, right, Mike?
It has been. Yeah, this was the first year it was open, so gorgeous arena now. But yeah, I've been coaching Blackburn Stingers since my kids were in IP there, so it's been a fun 8 years now. Wow, it's a long time.
That's awesome. I bumped into Laura Dudas, the deputy mayor, and she was telling me about the rink renos. So James, let's bring you into the conversation. You're of course a co-founder, and you're acting as the CTO. Give us your brief bio, James.
I started my career in telecom over here in Canada North. So I'm a West End kid, born and raised. I went to school at the University of Waterloo, but yeah, I cut my teeth in telecom, working for one of the Terry Matthews spinoffs, a company called Bridgewater Systems. That's kind of where I learned how to build, highly scalable systems. And then I sort of bounced around a little bit, did a brief stint at BlackBerry, a brief stint at Alcatel, back and forth to a company called Amdocs, and a place where I met Mike, a crew where they were doing alternative payments. Mike, being the smart guy that he is, kind of knew when to get out of that opportunity. I stuck around a little bit longer, actually took over his role and ended up assuming the responsibility for the entire product group there. And it was around the tail end of that opportunity where I started to feel a little bit anxious, and feeling like I wanted to try and do something on my own. Rewind is my first company, and I was quite fortunate that Mike wanted to try and take this leap with me. So
that's really neat, James. And the factoid that I pointed out on, or that I noted on your LinkedIn, is that the number of companies you've been with. I mean, you are a true kind of made in Ottawa technology success story. I thought that was That was really interesting. So why don't we go back in time, if you guys will indulge me here for a second? So I presume we're going back to 2013, 2014, sometime around then. And I heard that you guys met at another company, but where did the idea come from for Rewind? And Mike, maybe you want to start off, and
Sure, I'll
James,
go
you
ahead.
can
Sure,
chime in as well.
I'll go first. So yeah, James and I met. We met at a crew. We had been working there. I think we were working there for 6 months or so, and then, as you mentioned, I ended up leaving, spent some time at Halogen, and when I left Halogen, I really liked working with James, so I went back to him and I said, let's work on something. I believe that was in November of 2014 that we got together out at the Lone Star in Canada and said, let's come up with an idea. And the idea we had at the time was to do an in-page web browser editor, or an in-browser web page editor, I guess would be a better way of putting it. So a bit like Page Cloud, but like really, really early version of Page Cloud, with the ability to review and comment on things. And that was actually the first application that we built. We spent about 6 months on that application. And it was 6 months in, and it really wasn't doing all that well. We didn't have any customers at all. We didn't really have a really great go-to-market strategy. The product I thought was really interesting and really cool, but it was kind of matching the experience that I had at my first startup that didn't end up amounting to much. And so it was a few months into that where I emailed James and I said, or maybe met with him and said, we need to do something else. And I had always thought backups would be a good idea. I think I'm a big backups guy myself. I back up that iMac behind me to a hard drive here on the floor in my office. It's also backed up into the cloud. I thought backups would be a good business. I thought they'd be really low churn. I thought if you kept your costs low, customers would subscribe to it. And when it came time to figure out what to back up, I mean, Shopify was sort of the obvious choice, right? They were growing like a weed even 5 years ago. They were growing super quickly. So that was sort of the genesis of the idea, and it's since grown from there.
I like how often these origin stories start at a restaurant. Like everyone can remember, oh, we were at Lone Star. I can remember when I kind of started my OBJ journey. I remember where I was in a Asian food restaurant on Somerset way back when. But James, again, let's bring you back in. Anything you remember from those days?
It is funny. Like I remember the napkin and saying like 50-50 here, let's get going on this. The nugget of the story that I always find amusing is when Mike came to me and said this in-page editor thing that we were working on, like that's not working. I was so like entrenched and excited by that because it was very different than what I was working on at the time over in my day job. And he's like, let's do this backup thing. And I'm like, this is the dumbest idea ever. Like, why would anybody want this thing? It's in the cloud, for sure that they've got this solution cornered. And, that is now kind of the running joke, I think, in the last 5 or 6 years that we've been doing this, because that sentimentality that one of the co-founders has is kind of the one challenge that we as a company need to try and overcome on a day-to-day basis when we're talking to customers. Because a lot of people have the same kind of reaction where they just don't really understand the problem, and they put a lot of faith in the applications that they use online, that their data is safe and it is protected and it is secure. And all of that's really true, but it's at the platform level, their individual accounts. It's up to them, and they own the responsibility to ensure that their data is protected in the way that they think it is, but it really isn't. So, we like to laugh about that every once in a while. And I used to be pretty embarrassed to tell that story, and now I think it's actually a good one to tell as it relates to our customers.
Listen, guys, I think that's a gem right away, right? Because we all get involved in these passion projects and we're all in on them. And not all of them are going to be a big business success. So really interesting already, Mike, that you had the business acumen to say this isn't going to work. We need to do something else. So let's get into that something else. And I also chuckled when you guys said, why would you back up the cloud? The cloud's the cloud because it doesn't need to be backed up. But so anyway, we'll go back to you here, Mike, and say you already referred to your first initial target or to back up, which is Shopify. Obviously, a great decision. But tell us a little bit. Let's dig a little bit deeper into that story. So you settle in on Shopify and you're going to back up Shopify store data. Tell us about it.
Yeah, and so we launched this web page that really just asked their customers, like, is this a good idea or not? And I remember we also talked to I had a friend who worked at Shopify, and we emailed him and said, what do you think of this idea? And he thought, I remember the response. He's like, this is, good idea, but I don't think anybody's going to pay for it. We asked another person in Ottawa that was working on Shopify apps if they thought it was a good idea. They thought, well, maybe people would pay $5 a month, sort of kind of thing, right? And we just saw this massive opportunity that people didn't really realize, I guess. Like, um, it was pretty evident to us after we got started. The first month I think we had about 60 or 70 people install it. Then the next month we had another 10, so like 80 or 90 people, and then quickly into 100. And by the end of the first year, we were into the hundreds of customers who were using Rewind to protect their store. And that December, one of our customers lost all of their data. And I remember, having to talk to him while I was out tobogganing with my kids, and he was panicked that he had lost all of his data. And we were able to recover it. James wrote a little script up that recovered the data exactly the way it was before the problem happened. And at that point, we knew we had a great business on our hands. We had 500 or so people that were using it. We had proven the need for it. We had proven that the product worked. It was really just a matter of turning on billing. And so we did that. We started charging in January of 2016. And our first few years of revenue went like 30K, 300K, 1.2 million. Like, the company grew really, really quickly right out of the gate.
That's awesome. So you had some customer validation, you had some growth. And James, let's go back to you and talk to us about that revenue growth. So we just heard kind of the trajectory that you guys were on. What was happening inside the company? Were you desperate to hire people or engineers, or what were the challenges inside that growth period?
Scale was always something that hit us pretty quickly, because when you're dealing with a customer's data set with varying degrees of data sizes, what we built in those early days quickly proved to be inefficient and incapable of kind of dealing with the success that the company was seeing. So internally, we didn't wait too long to hire a couple of people that joined us on a part-time basis to help out, which was quite useful. But a lot of the focus was really on trying to shore up the infrastructure, because what was a minimum viable product that was capable of providing value to customers quickly showed that it was on shaky ground as the clientele base kind of grew month over month. So a lot of that initial investment was really just trying to make sure that the technology could sustain the kind of growth that the company was seeing.
I'm loving the narrative, guys. I'm just going to press pause on this part of the interview to recognize our sponsor of this episode. A big thanks to TD Bank. TD's relationship team is committed to your business. They take the time to understand your business and provide banking solutions that can help you achieve your business goals. A dedicated local team allows for deeper customer relationships and better service. They take the time to learn about your business and industry so they can react to changes in the marketplace and anticipate your business's evolving banking needs. Your relationship team can also connect you with other specialists at TD to help move your business forward. And once you're up and running, TD continues to actively manage your relationship, looking for ways to help grow your business. Learn more at tdcommercialbanking.com. So, Mike, let's come back to you. So I'm following the story. It's a really interesting one. I'm completely intrigued here. At what point do you guys decide, okay, we can't only be backing up Shopify stores, it needs to be more? When does that decision come, Mike?
That decision came, BigCommerce emailed us, actually. They contacted us and said, our customers have this problem. Have you thought about building Rewind for BigCommerce? I believe that was in 2016 or early 2017.
I think it was late 2016.
Late 2016 that they came to us and said, we have this problem. We were at this point actually all still working, most of us actually still working part-time. I think we had one full-time employee. So the really interesting part, I think, about Rewind is that for the first sort of, we started in June of 2015, but we worked part-time nights and weekends on it until February and April of 2017. So about 18 to 20 months of part-time nights and weekends. Like Jane mentioned, we had two others as well that were in that same boat that spent almost a year working nights and weekends on this with 4 people. That to me, I think was quite amazing. So the growth was difficult because we had 2 jobs at the time. We were all working 2 full-time jobs. work your day job and then you'd come home and you'd be, supporting this product with thousands of customers on it. And there were many Friday nights where we spent upgrading databases or doing things that, we our wives probably would have enjoyed, doing other things other than working on this product. And that continued for a long time until BigCommerce. Yeah, BigCommerce emailed us even while we were working part-time and said, can you build it for BigCommerce? And so we spent some time doing that. We launched BigCommerce in 2017. And then from there, the decision was really, what kind of a company do you want to be? Do you want to be an e-commerce company? Do you want to be a Shopify company? Do you want to be a backup company? Like, what do you want to do? And we decided that we wanted to be a backup company. And so the next sort of evolution from BigCommerce was to go and back up QuickBooks Online, and really, like James kind of alluded to, just scaling the company on those 3 platforms for the last few years has been incredibly challenging. And then obviously last year we ended up buying a company that does backups for GitHub, and we've since launched support for backups for Trello and have, some other plans for expansion in the next couple of weeks and months. But those early days was really driven by input by BigCommerce emailing us and asking us to build it for them.
Love that. And James, was it a bit you're the CTO, of course. Was it a bit counterintuitive to convince customers that you need to back up your cloud? Like, I think you even referred to that in passing earlier in the interview. Like, was that something that people immediately grasped, or they need to be convinced of that?
There's 2 kinds of customers, I think, that we saw in the early days, and it probably holds true today. There's the ones that get it. There's the ones that are like Mike, that back up everything, and they understand the problem, and they seek us out. And they either understand the problem because they've suffered some sort of disaster in the past, or somebody they know has experienced a problem and seen the benefit of a solution like ours. On the other side, there's the people who were like me and thought to themselves, well, for sure, these SaaS applications actually have my back, and if something goes wrong, I hit the wrong button, or somebody accidentally destroys my data set, that I can just call up their support line and they can help me. Those are the people that I think we have to work a little bit harder on to try and educate them on the problem and help them understand the value that Rewind brings. So those 2 things combined kind of drive the way that we have to address our customers and bring customers to our platform.
Well, I think you guys are demonstrating there's a need for it. I mean, that much is obvious in dealing with you. You guys have been very very generous with your time, I meant to say. And we're recording kind of a double ender. This is part 1 of a 2-part series. In part 2, we're going to look at some of the financial metrics of the company and determine where it's going in 2022. So just as we wrap up this first part, Mike, maybe we can come back to you. So you did recently raise a big venture capital, 2 venture capital rounds, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But just what was the elevator pitch? So the modern, 2021 elevator pitch for Rewind. And we'll end up on that, and we'll answer the rest in part 2. But what's the modern elevator pitch for Rewind today?
I mean, listen. So Rewind's vision is to back up every cloud service that's out there and really protect businesses. I mean, SaaS applications are growing at a tremendous rate. Every modern business is built on top of SaaS data, and that data needs to be protected. The long-term vision of the company obviously is to start with backups, but as you evolve into backups and you're storing all this data, it's commonly referred to that data is the new oil, right? It is gold information that you have to run your business. And so we do want to make use of the data that we're backing up. We want to provide additional value to our customers after we've backed up all these platforms. But the immediate vision for Rewind is back up every SaaS data platform that's out there.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you to Mike and James for joining us for part 1 of what will be a 2-part interview. We thank you for your time today. We know you're very busy, so we'll see you in just a bit. As we wrap up, let's recognize some of our sponsors. Techopia is brought to you by many great sponsors, such as Number Crunch, offering virtual CFO services for SaaS companies, Pearly Robertson Hill & McDougall, a leader in business and technology sector law, TD Bank, specialized programs for technology companies, the University of Ottawa Faculty of Engineering, creating the next generation of technical talent. Techopia is not only a podcast, we post new articles daily at obj.ca/Techopia. If you're on Facebook or Twitter, you can find Techopia at Techopia OTT. And if you're on YouTube, please subscribe and click the bell icon. Thanks again to James and Mike for being part of today's show. Fascinating to dig into the Rewind story, and we're going to continue doing so in a part 2 of an interview. Thanks for watching today. Please stay connected and please stay safe. Take care. Bye-bye.